also want to start off by saying, like, I have no idea what I'm doing.
Yo, my people, it's your boy EB the Kid, and we're here today for another episode of the Kid Show. Obviously, today we've got a very, very interesting guest, a man that's done so much work over the last 2 years with his podcast. He shined light on one of the most important parts of Cape Town and just brought a positive viewing to things that have been looked at so negatively over the generation of, I wouldn't say colored people, but I feel like Cape Town in a general sense. I'm here with Josh Wide Awake. How are you, brother?
I'm good, and you, man?
I'm nice. Obviously, I've watched your stuff for a long time, bro, since lockdown times, and that is something that I want to discuss as well. But bro, you've done so much in such a short space of time. I want to talk about you today. Obviously, you the one normally interviewing people, but today I'm interviewing you.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for that. Bro, your upbringing, bro. Where did you grow up?
So I'm actually originally from Zimbabwe. I was born in Harare.
Yeah.
And I've actually got a German passport, so it's a bit of a weird mix-up there.
So where does South Africa come in?
Dude, so my family's originally from Germany, and then they left to Zim, of all places. Because back in the day, Zim was an awesome place. It's still very beautiful. Unfortunately, corruption and just, the government kind of totaled it. So from Zim, my parents moved to Cape Town when I was about 7.
Yeah.
And that's where I've been. So yeah, German passport, Zimbabwean born, but I consider myself a Cape Townian, a South African, yeah.
But legally, you are Zimbabwean.
Yes.
And German, obviously.
German passport, yeah. Wow. South African ID.
That's interesting, though. So, bro, you do a load of journalism, and I just want to touch on you growing up. Was that something that you were always interested in?
So, I don't really know where it started, to be honest. When I was very young, I was an odd kid, and I would, after school, go into the bush and just photograph, like, all these kinds of different animals, chameleons, birds. I would sit in the bush for ages, like waiting for the perfect shot. And from there, probably when I was about 15 or 16, I just started venturing off into different communities. And I was just very much an explorer. So I ventured. I remember the one day I was actually in Woodstock.
Yeah.
And there's like this little settlement there where people were living in this building illegally. But there was tons of people, man. There was just all kinds of people. There was homeless people living there. There was gangsters. There was just normal people that needed a place to stay. Yeah. And their place burnt down, and we went to go and just give some food and stuff. And I just kept going back. And eventually I took my camera and started photographing the place and talking to the people, photographing them. And that's probably where it started.
Where your love for journalism and being a helping hand for the, I wouldn't say struggling community, but I would say for the less fortunate in some aspects. Now, you interview people on such a sensitive topic. Like someone like me, bro, I stay away from that, bro.
Yeah.
I stay away from all those sensitive type of things. What drew you towards that?
Well, I think it's hard to ignore when you live in South Africa, right?
Yeah.
We live in such a beautiful place, but at the same time, we live in a place where so many people are struggling. More people are struggling than not in South Africa, right? So I do fun stuff as well, but every time I kind of veer off of this path of interviewing the kind of people I interview and documenting the kind of places I document, I always sway back to it. Just because, I don't know, as a South African, how can you walk past a person lying on the side of the road and just like go home and just continue, you know?
Yeah.
So being in the space we're in, I feel like I have a platform, use it for something that is good, something that's interesting. And I also find that like, it's crazy to see how little people actually know about what's going on. And I like with the recent documentary I did with the gangsters,
that
right?
Very, very vital.
And the Cape Flats. Like for me, I've seen that stuff so much from such a young age that it's almost normal. Like I know this stuff is not normal, but I know it's happening, right? And I know what's going on all the different neighborhoods and areas in South Africa, especially in Cape Town. And yeah, man, it's just for me, it's just normal. But when I post stuff like that, the reaction I get is not normal because people are like, this is crazy that this is happening in Cape Town, like just down the road from us. Like the Cape Flats is just down the road from the city, right? It's literally a 15, 20-minute drive.
And that's actually interesting that you say that, because I feel like a lot of people live in this bubble where they see Camps Bay, they see Sea Point, and a lot of people also do believe that Cape Town is the most well-run city in South Africa.
Yeah.
And it is. But I think that the media sometimes neglects all the negatives that is also happening within the city and all the people that are suffering and staying in the Cape Flats or dealing with different challenges. And I feel like it's very, very important that you do document that. Now, before we get into the deeper side of your documentation, your journalism, I want to talk about lockdown.
Yes.
Because I think this is something that a lot of people might not know about you, but most of the pictures that we were getting of Cape Town, at least in lockdown, I think they were coming from you.
A lot of them, yeah.
A lot of them were coming from you.
Yeah.
So talk to me about that, bro. How did you gain the access for that? Like, how did you get into that?
Yeah.
Like, how were you allowed when you're all in quarantine?
So at the beginning of lockdown, it was like literally the day of lockdown.
Yeah.
Me and a friend were like, we have to document this because this is something unprecedented. It's never happened before where literally the whole world just shuts down, right?
Yeah.
So we were like, we have to do this. And we were trying to figure out how to do it. And I remember we contacted like a bunch of newspapers and magazines and production companies. And we were like, please, can you guys get us the access so that we can go out onto the streets and document this?
Yeah.
And a lot of them said no. And then one of them said yes. And we went quickly to like all these different printing shops. This was like 4 p.m. Like things were about to close.
Yeah.
And then after like 5 p.m., you just won't be able to do anything for like 21 days. So we had to do it then and there. And we ran to all these different printing shops. We got press badges printed. They were so bad. And we didn't think they would work. And we got a whole bunch of documentation. And we just hit the streets basically from there. We had no idea if the papers were going to work. But it was like probably like 3 or 4 days into lockdown where we got pulled over by cops for the first time. And they checked all our papers and they checked out. And a few times it actually happened where the cops were like looking for reasons to arrest us for being out, right? Because we didn't look like real journalists.
Yeah, of course.
We were just like, I'm just like a young kid running around with a camera, like following the cops through all these areas that they're going through, like the townships, the Cape Flats and that kind of stuff. And they're like, who is this kid? And they pulled me over, checked all my papers, and they checked out, man. And
was this real documentation?
Yeah, we had proper documentation.
Oh, yeah, because you mentioned how you went to go print the.
We printed it, but it was official stuff.
Oh, yes.
We just weren't sure. We just weren't sure. And man, I remember a lot of the images that really went crazy viral were the drone shots of South Africa. I mean, well, Cape Town. And a few days before lockdown, I was flying my drone in Dunoon Township. And you know those massive electrical wires that run over the townships, a lot of them, and like through the outskirts of Cape Town? The drone flew straight into it. Well, I flew it straight into it and it crashed. So I was like, I don't have a drone for lockdown now to film the streets. And like 5 or 6 days in or a week in or something like that, I was just like, I have to try the drone again. And I put it up and this thing was just wobbling like crazy because it hit the floor really hard after hitting the electrical wires and it flew.
How did you get the drone back after flying it in the noon? Were you just walking in the noon, brother?
Yeah.
Walking, I can't lie to you, the noon it's a beautiful community, but it's also a very dangerous community. So how did you end up flying your drone there, and how did you get it back? You just walked and got it back?
I mean, I was just walking around, with the drone, and I was flying it right above me, so it crashed right in front of me.
Yes.
Crashed right in front of me. But I always go, I mean, I think there's a big misconception, and I think even maybe some of the stuff I do kind of perpetuates that misconception, where it's like a lot of these areas are dangerous.
Yeah.
Very dangerous, obviously, right? But if you know what you're doing, if you're with the right people, and not even if you're with the right people, I just find if you go in with respect, you talk to people, you learn about the community, you'll never be in danger, really. Like even in the Cape Flats, like so much of the community is not gangsterism, right? It's such a small portion of the community. And I think that's what I want to try and do next is show the other side of things because, I think it's important to show some like the people that were in my documentary. I like the beginning of the documentary I released recently, which was called Inside the Most Dangerous Neighborhood in South Africa.
Yeah.
It started with interviews with gang members, right? But
transition to the more positive side.
Yeah.
About the ex-gang member who was obviously changed his life and helped his community.
That was the second half of it. And I think that's way more important to show, to be honest. And I always have this weird feeling inside of me when I post stuff like that documentary, because it is important to see that side of things, the dangerous side, and the people that are really struggling, right? Gangsters are just people that went down a really bad path due to their circumstances. And it's important to show that. But a lot of the time, they use that opportunity to spread things that they want to spread, and they play it up for the cameras. So I think it's really important from going forward from now on to show a lot more of the positive than the negative. Because there is so much positive in South Africa. But at the same time, dude, and I was thinking about this on the way, and I was like talking to my parents about it yesterday as well. I'm so upset at the moment about like the state South Africa's in. Because it's such an amazing place, and there's so many amazing people. Like even now, I feel like a bit emotional talking about it. It's such an amazing place, and people just struggling everywhere you look. I mean, like my cousin's down from London at the moment. We went out for dinner last night, and we're walking past like this blanket on the side of the road with this homeless guy just sleeping on the side of the road. For us, that's so normal. That's not a normal thing. There's poverty everywhere, right? There is poverty everywhere, all around the world, but there's different levels to it. And I feel like in South Africa, it's just getting so bad. And with the elections coming up, it's like, who do you vote for, right? It's like, who's the better option?
Yeah, and that is something that I do want to get into, but I don't want to.
No,
I feel like you're getting passionate. You're getting passionate,
Getting passionate,
because I first want to end off of lockdown. Because of lockdown, you've done quite a few things with the photography, and just the experience of that. Like, how was that for you being outside, and when no one was outside, bro?
Yeah, it was really interesting, dude. It was one of the most interesting times of my life, and at that point, I had gone through quite a few things in the years leading up to that that I was just struggling with, my own personal stuff. And it was just like this weird experience where the whole of Cape Town just stood still. And I just felt like it really kind of ignited that passion for me again for photography and filmmaking, because we were just in this moment where it was just me and a few other guys running around the city, documenting things that have never really been seen before.
Yeah.
And I mean, I remember coming into town, the highway was just empty, completely empty. And I parked my car in the middle of the road, and I just got out and started vlogging in the middle of the road. Like it was in the middle of a highway.
And that's something you'll never be able to do again, probably.
Hopefully not.
Yo, because that must be a weird feeling, being able to experience something that you probably won't even see for the next 5, 6, 7, even 8 generations.
Yeah.
The way things are going right now. But
and I mean, I took this photo on the night of lockdown, like literally as we were about to go into lockdown. It was like 8 p.m. And I think lockdown was at 12 p.m. And I was driving down the highway, and there was, the big road signs, the electrical signs that they put like notifications on for like, please slow down, that kind of stuff. It said something like lockdown at midnight. And it was just like such a cool photo, a simple photo, but just, I don't think anyone else in South Africa got that photo. And that was like, it wasn't my best photo, but it was so, I think for me, like, it's iconic for me because it's just like,
it's very purge-like.
It was it was like,
it's very purge-like.
It was just like everyone's running to their homes, and it was interesting.
That's very, very interesting. I'm glad you're able to obviously capture these moments. But before we move forward, at that time when you acquired those permits, what was your job at that time? Like, what were you doing in your life at the time?
At that time, I don't even know, dude. I was figuring it out. I always still, like, even now, I still feel like I'm figuring it out.
How old were you at the time?
At that time, when was lockdown? 4 years ago.
4 years ago, yeah.
To start, I was probably 23.
About my age. At that time,
27 now, and I had no idea, man. Like, I suffered from addiction for years, from a young age, and
addiction to what, if I may ask?
To everything.
To everything.
Yeah, I mean, I was in rehab the first time I was 16 years old. The first time I went to rehab. Second time was probably like a year or two before lockdown. well, no, actually probably just before lockdown, I was in rehab, I think.
Yeah.
And I went for 6 months. So when I got out, I didn't know what to do. I had no job. I worked, I've only had like 1 or 2 real jobs in my life. Like I worked for SAVC, and I was making like 10,000 Rand a month, just traveling South Africa with like the different TV shows, taking behind the scenes photos. And I hated that job.
Yeah.
It was not like I was sleeping in the offices in Joburg. It was not, it was really not nice. And I don't even remember what the other one was. Like I never really had a proper job. I didn't finish school, nothing like that. I studied, but I was an addict while I was studying. So I barely went to college. I studied photography. So I didn't really know what I was doing. And in a weird way, like lockdown was one of the best things that ever happened to me because it did like ignite that passion again, because I was like, this is never going to happen again. And I just was so excited to get out and film. And I think that is when things started to change for me.
And obviously you feel like lockdown was a good point for you to totally overcome your previous addictions, because I feel like the way you explain it, at least you speak about going to rehab constantly, so you obviously fell back into it, and lockdown was something that allowed you to break free from it completely. Do you think by igniting your passion and finding something that you actually really love?
Yeah, it definitely helped a lot. Yeah, definitely helped a lot. I mean, I always go through moments though where I still dip, and you know, I feel like a lot of us do.
Yeah,
it's kind of hard not to these days, because you're just seeing so many negative things all the time.
Definitely.
But yeah, it definitely helped a lot for me to kind of just clear my head, have a good. I know it sounds weird because it was a bad time for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But it allowed me to clear my head and just enjoy what I was doing again, and that led to me eventually starting the podcast, the Wide Awake podcast.
Yeah. At that time, before you started the Wide Awake podcast, because I think that was a bit later into lockdown.
Yeah.
But before that, you were bringing joy to a lot of people
with the Caroline stuff.
With Caroline, yes, your housekeeper.
Yeah.
I would say is the right term to use. Tell me about that, bro. You and like just about your relationship.
Yeah, so mine and Caroline relationships, I think it's an interesting one. It's not a unique one.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people have housekeepers in South Africa, and I feel like it's a topic that not a lot of people really talk about, because it's not like they're an employee.
Yeah, they're part of the family.
A lot of the time, yeah. It is very much like, because they're with you all the time, right? And Caroline, she started working for my parents when I was very young. I must have been like 8 or 9. And she was 18. So she was really young.
Yeah.
And we, like, as young, like, she was like an older sister in a way. That was the kind of relationship that it started as, right? And back then we were making Jackass videos. Me and my friends used to like do stunts and stuff, like really like hectic for that time.
Yeah.
Jackass was a big inspiration for me. I loved like Bam Margera, Johnny Knoxville, all those guys. And we started making Jackass videos, and I would always prank Caroline, and we would always like play fight, and just usual kid stuff.
Yeah.
You know? And we just got closer and closer over the years. And she was also there through a lot of the terrible stuff, like my worst moments that I went through. Like, dude, I remember I would like lock my door, and I'll get to the funny videos as well.
Yeah.
But I would like lock my door because I was using drugs all night, and no one could get into my room. And I remember I have a press stick addiction. You know what press stick is? Like sticky stuff.
Yeah.
And like I always play with it. It's like a stress ball for me. And I had such a big ball. It was massive, right? And I used to put it by the door to block the door. Because once you put it there, like if you're trying to open the door, it just squishes under the door and you cannot open it, right? So like Caroline used to try and get into my room in the morning. And I remember the one day she couldn't get through the door because it was blocked by the press stick. So she went around to the balcony and climbed through the window. And I just hear her screaming like, Josh, I'm stuck. I'm stuck. And her, like when I get to the bathroom, half her body's like over, like outside, and half her body's over the bathtub. And like I just pulled her through, and she came in. But yeah, she was there through a lot of hard moments for me. And we were always doing funny videos together. We were always doing pranks on each other. And filming it, not filming it, just for fun, because social media didn't really exist.
Yeah, at the time,
Yeah. So we were just doing it for fun. And then as later in the years, we did a driving video, which like, did you ever see the driving video?
No, I think I might have seen it, but you see, I feel like you stopped doing that, obviously. So
Yeah.
it's difficult for it to stay in my memory because social media is so fast.
Yeah, very.
Yeah.
You see stuff all the time. But that was probably the most viral video I ever did. And it was completely unintentional. Like, Caroline always asked me if I could teach her how to drive. And I said, eventually, like, I was just like, come with me, let's go and I'll teach you. And my mom was like, you should take your camera with to film it, like a little GoPro. And I just plonked it on the dashboard and we went for a drive. She had never been in a car before, like driving a car before. And I had never taught anyone how to drive.
Yeah.
And, like, dude, over the years, I've had really bad accidents. So I'm probably like the worst person to teach someone how to drive. And we filmed this experience of us just teaching her how to drive. And she almost had an accident while we were doing it, right? Anyway, I thought,
And
like,
that was recorded, no?
it was all recorded, yeah.
Yes, because I think I can envision it in my mind, but I can't like, you know what I mean?
So she was freaking out anyway, and I was super calm during when she almost had the accident, because I've been in so many accidents.
Yeah.
So that happened. We get home, and my mom was like, "How did the lesson go?" And I was like, "Yeah, it was fine. It was like just normal for us because we were always doing silly things." And my friend, I ended up posting like a snippet of it online. And my friend was like this girl that I had a crush on. She was like, you should post the full video.
Yeah.
Because it's really funny and I want to share it. I was like, for sure, I'm going to post the full video.
Because your crush told you to do it. Of course you're going
Yeah,
to.
I was like, I'm going to post the full. So I posted the full video and it just took off, dude. It was on like Loud Bible, Daily Mail, like literally everywhere. It was on Ridiculousness at the beginning of last year. Like this is like 7 or 8 years later. It's still going. It's insane.
That's
and then obviously during lockdown we started doing just funny stuff on Instagram.
Yeah, you guys did do quite a bit of big videos that people really loved. But I want to talk to you about something that there's this idea. There's lots of people with housekeepers, for instance, posting videos with their housekeepers. Some people have a problem with they feel like the housekeepers have no choice.
Yeah.
And they sort of feel like because they work for the family.
For sure, yeah.
They are being, I wouldn't say exploited is the right word, but it's being exploited for views. Some people might feel that way. And you've probably got a lot of claims like that yourself.
Oh, yeah.
So what differentiates your relationship with your housekeeper to anyone else's?
Well, I don't know if there's a difference necessarily, but what I always feel about it, because there was a girl that always made videos about us.
Yeah.
And saying that it was wrong. But like we've been doing this for ages. Like we've been doing this before social media. Whereas I think we blew up and then people started doing it.
Yeah.
Right. So we weren't doing it for any reason at the beginning. We were just doing it for fun. And with Caroline, she'll tell me to fuck off if she doesn't want to be in a video.
Yeah.
She's not scared.
Yeah.
We have that kind of relationship, right? There's no pressure. There's nothing. Like if she doesn't want to do videos, she doesn't want to do videos. We don't have to do a video. But I just think that might be the difference is that we've just been doing it since we were kids. Like we have fun doing it.
Yeah. And I feel like some housekeepers might feel like I'm just came to this family's house and now they all of a sudden recording. But I feel like yours is a lot different because you guys grew up together.
Yeah.
You guys been doing this together. And
when we started doing social media, like properly during lockdown together, she was getting 50-50. So if we did brand deals and stuff, she would make 50% of everything.
Wow. So that's actually an interesting one.
So it's like, who are you to tell Caroline she can't work and make money online?
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
That's brilliant. And I feel like a lot of these other people, I mean, obviously not shaming anyone, but a lot of these other people don't have the heart to give the housekeeper half of the money that they'll do on social
that's
media.
The whole thing is, I mean, we like, especially TikTok, we got to like 300 or 250,000 followers in like 3 months. Instagram, it was like 130,000 followers in like also 3 months, which was crazy. And like Caroline is like a massive celebrity now in South Africa.
Yeah.
And I would prefer, like, obviously I'm focusing on what I'm doing now a lot. And that takes up a huge amount of my time.
Yeah.
And Caroline is like not interested in recording alone. So she only wants to do it with me.
Yeah.
But yeah, she was making 50%. So it's like
what
she can make like double her salary by doing like a brand deal. Why wouldn't she want to do that?
She want to do that?
And who are you to say she can't?
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
What is the biggest job you guys done in that time?
For Meta, you know, Meta Facebook.
Yeah.
So Meta approached us, and they gave us quite a lot of money to do.
How much was it?
It was like, I don't remember exactly. It was like close to 100,000 or something.
Wow.
Or 70. It was like something like that.
Between 70 to 100,000.
Yeah. I don't remember exactly, but that was probably the biggest. That was definitely the biggest one. And that was like, we don't make money like that often.
Yeah.
You know how it is.
Yeah, yeah.
That was like one big thing that we did. The rest of them were like, especially, I find when you're working with South African brands, they always try to get like as much out of you as possible and give you as little as possible.
Yeah.
Like with me, I don't do trade exchanges. I'm not interested in free stuff. You know what I mean? If with work, if you want to work with us, cool. If you see the value in what we're doing and you want us to be part of your brand, don't offer us a free pair of sandals.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, pay us, of course.
Exactly, yeah.
And you just gave half of the 70 to 100 grand.
That's how it is.
Wow. That's beautiful, bro.
That's how it is.
Big ups for that. And I feel like that's the side of things that people that want to accept on social media.
Also, we're not going to talk about that.
Yeah.
It's none of anyone's, you know what I mean? It's the people that were going after us. They weren't really going after us. There was a few people on TikTok. You know what I mean? But like, it's none of their business.
Of course.
It's none of their business.
After you go through the spell of, obviously your housekeeper is a constant theme in your life. You guys filming video together. Caroline, let me not address as your housekeeper, although that's Caroline. You then decide to start the Wide Awake podcast. And I know your second episode was the big one. But what inspired you to start doing that? Do you think your background of battling with addiction and not having anyone to document your story played a part in that?
Yeah, I think so. I always struggle to like articulate why I do certain things.
Yeah.
I think it's because there's probably more than one reason, right? That I do things. But I think that definitely plays a big role because a lot of the people that I interview have come from really like harsh circumstances, really like underprivileged backgrounds.
Yeah.
You know, and like I think you're referring to Turner, the second episode I ever did, right? I relate a lot to a lot of these guys, and I come from a completely different background.
Yeah.
And I just feel like I see a lot of myself in a lot of the people I interview. And I always say this, but I would be in like the same position as a lot of these people if I didn't have the upbringing I had, right? I've got incredible parents. They're still together. They put me through school when I was suffering with addiction. They stuck with me all the way. And you know what I find funny is people give me shit about that as well. They're like, oh, you're such a privileged, right?
Yeah.
I'm not overly privileged. I'm not extremely wealthy at all. But I have amazing parents that took really good care of me. And I think that's an amazing thing. And I always find it so strange when people try to give you like flack for having a good upbringing.
Yeah,
it's like, I'm sorry, my parents were really nice to me when I was young.
A lot of people want you to suffer.
Yeah.
I don't understand. Like they want you to have a tough upbringing, or like it's fine, guys. It's literally fine if you grew up in a good home. It's literally fine if you're not a gangster. Because I feel like
everyone should grow up in a good home.
Even some people that grew up in a good home will be like, yo, I struggled growing up. I don't know why everyone wants to push this narrative of them having a struggle growing up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think everyone does struggle. Everyone struggles. And you can see that. Like, I know people that are really, really, like, not necessarily know them like good friends, but I know people that like say were at the same school as me or friends of friends, and their parents are like really wealthy people, but I'm not going to get into their stories, but people always suffer. It's part of being human is you're going to suffer.
Yeah.
Life is hard. Whether you're rich or poor, it's much harder for some people, right? But everyone, I always like, if someone's got a perfect life in my eyes and they tell me they're struggling. You know what I mean? Everyone's going through things. But there's definitely, like they say, there's definitely levels to it.
Yeah, some people have the short end of the stick.
Yeah. So I always try and be as positive with things, because when you are fortunate, you feel like you shouldn't complain, right? But I think that you just have to try and be positive, right? You just have to try and be positive.
Now, the type of guests you have are, I think they are very different, but similar in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Your second episode with Turner, it went very viral.
Yeah, Turner Adams. Yeah.
I think for some parts for the wrong reasons, but for some part also for the right reasons. Now I want to start from the beginning. Like, how do you reach out to someone like that? Like, how did you get the connect to link up before we get more into it?
Yeah. So I also want to start off by saying, like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I think a lot of people look at me and see the work that I do and think like, oh, this guy's got a whole team behind him.
Yeah.
This guy's like got like big funding, or he's got like people looking for these guests. Like every single thing that I do is completely alone, right? I do everything alone. I have like, say like my parents or my friends, I'll show them stuff to be like, is this okay? Is this not okay?
Yeah.
But everything I do is like on my judgment, which can be good and which can be really bad.
Of course, yeah.
Right? Because when you're doing something, sometimes you get lost in it and you don't see how other people might see this.
Definitely.
Or perceive it, right? So when it comes to like the Turner podcast, I just through my photography days, like I was always walking around, and as a photographer, you look at other people's photos, and I remember I always saw photos of Turner Adams, who is a ex-gangster that lives in Lavender Hills, and I just thought he looked really interesting, and I looked into his story a bit, and he had a really interesting story. Like a lot of the guys that I interview do have really interesting stories. And I just thought, let me try and reach out and find him. And I just, like, I didn't know how to do that at that time. So I just looked online for everyone that he had worked with before, productions that he had been in, photographers that had worked with him. And I spent like 3 weeks trying to find him, and I just couldn't. So, well, eventually I did. Eventually I got a hold of someone and they pointed me in the right direction, and I went to Lavender Hills and I just basically knocked on his door and I found him.
Bro, and that's so bizarre to me, because a lot of the times, like obviously I linked up with you, we've spoken before, and a lot of people also don't know that you get most of your guests by going into these areas and just taking the leap of faith. But apart from that, how I said like the episode went went viral for the wrong reasons and for the right reasons. The clip that went viral of Turner Adams was the one of if you don't give us now ass, then we're gonna stab you and whatnot. So how does that make you feel? Because you're obviously this person trying to portray these people in a better light and sharing their story, but now social media, you can't control social media.
Yeah.
So does that make you feel hurt in a sense? The fact that you put out this clip and you put it out with such good intentions, however it's perceived in a way in which it's now a big joke. Because I can't lie, like TikTok sounds go viral.
Yeah.
They I use the sound myself. So I'm a hypocrite asking this question.
No, it's okay.
But at the same time, does it make you feel hurt, the fact that people are now making a joke of this? Or does it bring you a lot of positivity, knowing that even though people are making a joke of this, at least some good is going to come from it, because people are going to watch the episode and more people are going to find out about his story?
The way I see it, I don't mind at all. Like, because it was a funny moment, right? And I think that's the thing about my show is I kind of, I'm on the border of like entertainment and something that's like serious journalism. Right? And that's what I like. I don't want it to be super stiff. I don't want it to be all entertainment. I want it to, because to get people to watch serious interviews, it has to be entertaining, right?
Of course, yeah.
So we try to have fun with it. And when you bring interesting guests on, like say like Turner, right? He's gonna say stuff that's funny, and I don't mind at all. And I think he loves it as well, right? It was like such a funny clip.
Yeah.
But when you really do look at it, it's quite hectic, because like he's talking about like people getting assaulted in prison, right? But it is what it is. There's nothing you can do about it. But I don't mind it. The guests don't really mind it, and I think that's how social media is. Those clips go viral, and then hopefully people go and watch the full thing.
And obviously
you know what I mean?
learn the more informative part of the episode.
Yeah. So it's like it's always going to be the crazier moments or the silly moments that go viral. But that's just part of it. That's just social media. You can kind of lean into it with like, because I also post some of the funny clips that happen on the show, right? Because that will get people to go watch the full thing. that's the hope, is people go watch the full thing.
Yeah.
Because with the 30-second clip or a minute-long clip, there's so much context that is missing. And it's tough, but hopefully the people go watch the full thing. That's all I can say.
And obviously understand more of it. You also mentioned how someone pointed you towards Turner.
Yeah.
Now, I do feel like you guys obviously start chatting, they connect you the two. How is the initial like interaction with Turner yourself?
Dude, so I'll tell you how it happened, right? So the day of the podcast, and like literally the podcast was recorded in my old bedroom at home, right? So, so I go to Lavender Hills and I fetch Turner, and we chat. I go into his place, into his house, and we chat for a bit. He gets in the car. We drive back to the studio, aka my old bedroom.
Yeah.
And we get to the house, and like one of the most heartbreaking things that happened during that time was when Turner came into the house and he saw the house, right? It's not the craziest house or anything like that, but it's obviously way nicer than the conditions he's living in. And I just remember his like look in his eyes. He was like, wow. You know what I mean? Like there's so much color here.
Yeah.
Because my parents, like my mom especially, loves colorful things, puts them everywhere. And like when you go into places like Lavender Hills, everything's like gray. The pavement's gray, the walls are gray, like everything is gray, right? So it was like really a heartbreaking thing to see. Like it was like almost like he stepped out into a color world. Like, it was crazy. Like it was just so like blown away by like the grass and pool and like just, you know what I mean? We sat down, we had lunch with my mom and my auntie, and like it was an experience. It was like one of my first experiences where it was the second episode I've ever done. So it was the first experience I've ever had where someone like Turner came into my house and, met my family. And it was an amazing moment. And then we went upstairs and we had a chat, and it was just like, he's so entertaining. He's a really good speaker. He's charismatic. He's funny. And he's also got like, he's had a really hectic life and a really hectic story. And I just found it was amazing how he carries himself after just the upbringing he had and all the things he's been through. Then after the podcast, I dropped him home, and I mean, that's
history. And you mentioned how you record in your old bedroom. Now, as much as ex-gangsters have changed their lives, I feel like there comes a lot of precaution that you do need to take.
Yeah.
Now you bringing someone who has a history of crime, who has a history of doing a lot of bad things into your home. Like, what type of dangers do you not feel afraid at times that you're showing them where you stay, you're showing them how you operate things? Does it bring you any fear at all?
Yeah. So the way I go about things, and maybe it's a naive way to go about things, is I always go with like just trust, right? I just go on my gut feeling and just trust. And I think that's the reason I'm able to do and speak to the people that I speak to, is because I don't put up any walls. There's no security with me. I'm not scared.
Yeah.
Like I go in looking to have a good interaction, right? I'm not going in already putting up walls in between us, like security and like not showing you where the location is. You know what I mean? It's just like, let's go do this. Whatever happens, happens.
Making it very organic, yes.
Yeah. But I also, at the same time, I try to minimize risks in, like, I'll go and meet the person first. Like, I'll go pick up Turner, so I'll go meet him first. And I just go with trust, right? And I wouldn't really want to do that with active gangsters necessarily, but I can see someone like Turner's changed his life a lot, right? And he's become almost like, in a way, a role model in his community. So even though he's done bad things, I still feel like if you lead with trust and like, I know it sounds so corny, but like an open heart, you get that back from people, right? Yeah. And sometimes it does go sideways. Like I've had gangsters threatening me before.
And that's actually my follow-up question. Like, what has been the worst outcome?
Yeah, so I won't say names, but I did have an experience where someone was threatening me and trying to get money out of me, and like after
you've put them on an episode.
And I do pay certain people, like it depending on the circumstance, right? Because I feel like if you have someone that's from like a really bad background, like it's not right to bring them on a platform and just not give them anything. Like with Ellen Pakkies afterwards, we went out and we bought like tons of groceries and stuff she needed for her flat, like skincare stuff, and like I just basically took her to the shop and she just got whatever she wanted, right? But yeah, this one time this guy was trying to get money out of me, more money, because I had already paid him, and it just so his phone broke and he was calling me from other people's phones, the other gang members' phones, and suddenly at like 2 a.m, I was having like calls where people were just calling me with no one on the other end of the phone. It was just breathing, like
Wow.
So it was quite scary, and I did change my number because of that. Yeah.
And your house address, bro. These people know where you stay.
That's another thing.
How do you change that, bro?
Yeah, you can't.
You can't change that.
I just pray. I was just like, please, just don't come to the house. But they were threatening that as well. They were threatening that as well.
Did you end up giving them the money or not?
No, I didn't.
Because do you believe that once you start giving them money, it's just gonna keep continuing?
Yeah. And I believe like if you're working with people, you pay them, right? Like I don't like asking people to do stuff with me for free. Like if I ask a videographer, or even if a videographer says to me, like, let's go out and shoot, I want to help you on your next project, I'll still pay them.
Yeah.
Because I believe people should be paid for their work. I hate when people lowball me, so I don't want to lowball other people. So the podcast has moved now to a different location.
Where it's not in your home anymore.
It's not in the home
Protect
anymore.
yourself, yeah, of course. So you do mention that you pay guests, because I feel like a lot of people might have felt that, this guy is just bringing these people on this podcast, exploiting them for views, telling their story, and he's benefiting from it. And
that's another thing I want to talk about.
And I think that is very important that you do pay people, because it just feels like in social media we can take a lot, man, and we don't give back. And I think it's very important that you do so. If you want to shed more light on it, you can.
Yeah. So what was the question again?
Just the fact that some people might feel like you're exploiting these individuals for views.
It is a difficult line. You kind of have to walk with it, right? Because a lot of people do exploit people for views, right? But the way I do things, I feel like I'm trying my best. I don't always get it right.
Yeah.
And I've got it wrong several times where I've messed up, right? And things came out a way that I didn't initially intended to come out. And maybe that's because of a lack of production team and people being there to say, this is probably not good to post.
Yeah.
Right? Which has happened before. But I try my best to do it ethically. I try and make sure people are happy with how things go out.
Yeah.
Right? Like if someone says, I don't want you to post this episode, I'll scrap the whole episode. If someone says, I don't want this part in the episode, I'll scrap it. I'll cut it out. Right? And another thing is, don't have a huge budget for things, right? Like, I'm sure with YouTube in South Africa, the monetization is very low.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people that watch this show, watch my show, think that like
we're just making bags of money.
We're boiling it out, right? Like, I'll even say it, like most months, I don't even break $1,000 on YouTube monetization, right? Which is like 18,000 Rand. And the amount of work that goes into it and the amount of money you spend, like you need a new camera, it breaks. That's already 30 grand, right? So there's a lot of things that people, I think, have misconceptions about, which is YouTubers in South Africa do not make that much money because the monetization in South Africa is much less, right? But when it comes to like exploitation and stuff, I think the reason YouTubers and like people on Instagram and TikTok get hit way more than like mainstream outlets is because there's an individual to go after.
Yeah.
Right? Like if something happens, you're the face of this podcast. They're not going to go after the people in the background. They're going to go after you.
After me, yeah.
Whereas if like say CNN, something happens on CNN, like they report fake news, there's no one really to go after because
there's no face of CNN.
It's such a big company, right? So the one thing I agree with is you have to try your best to make sure that when you're working with hard topics, that the information that goes out is right, which it's not always right, right? Because when you're speaking to people, they give you their thoughts and their feelings, which is exactly that. It's their thoughts and their feelings, right? And you're someone that's coming from like say like the stuff with the Cape Flats, right? I don't live there. I've never lived there. I don't know people that live there. I do now, but beforehand you don't, right?
Yeah.
So you're kind of just going off the information people are giving you, which can be quite dangerous. But yeah, I mean, you just have to be careful and make sure that what you're doing is going in with pure intention. And I mean, if people say that you're doing this kind of stuff for profit, this, like the work I do, is the least profitable work you can do online, because no one wants to sponsor you. The monetization is way less. Like I'll tell you now, the documentary I just put out about the Cape Flats, demonetized.
Demonetized?
Yeah. So like now you're making no money. You know what I mean? So people that come, like a lot of time people go, you're profiting off of this. I'm literally losing money.
Yeah.
Since I've started this podcast, I've like literally lost money. I haven't made anything. I started the podcast with more money than I have now. So if someone says you're doing it for money, like I'll show you my bank account, bro. There's like 5,000 Rand in there right now.
That documentary in itself was doing crazy numbers, though.
I mean, in like a week, it hit like almost 800,000 views. Completely demonetized now. So,
wow.
And I mean, I've put out one documentary. Like I've done several podcasts with gangsters and about the Cape Flats, but I've only put one documentary out. So that documentary is like because I've been doing stuff in the Cape Flats for about 3 or 4 years. That's like 4 years of work, of like learning, and like a lot of the footage was taken, well, not a lot, but like some of the footage was taken a year or two ago, and like it took like 2 weeks to edit and voiceover, and it's a lot of work. So when you put something out like that, even though, and I will say this, I feel like I could have done a much better job on the documentary, but I was working on it for so long that I had to go, like, I need to put it out now.
Yeah.
Because, like, you know, like, for me, ad revenue is, like, the only way I make revenue at the moment. But, yeah, I do acknowledge, like, some people say, like, it's a bit sloppy, it's not so professional. I'm doing it alone. I'm trying my best. I'm not trained. But there's always room for improvement. There's always room for improvement. And I sometimes I do get that feeling like, what are my intentions here? Why am I doing this? Why am I focusing on this area so much, right? And especially with the Cape Flats, I just feel like no one's talking about it. No one, like, how often do you see footage of the Cape Flats and the things that are going on there? Because 2 weeks ago, I think it was a young girl got shot in the head. She was like younger than 10 years old. She's caught in the crossfire of a gang fight, right? You hear, like, that one I heard on the radio, but that stuff happens all the time. And
no one speaks
about it. And people say, like, you've made so many videos about the Cape Flats. Like, isn't that how you learn about something? Can you learn about something after making one video or speaking to one person, having one conversation, right? Doesn't that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. But I've spoken to a lot of people, and some people might also feel like, I feel like, as much as we don't like to admit it, I feel like color is still a big thing within South Africa.
Huge.
So the fact that you are a white man,
for sure,
constantly making videos about the Cape Flats, some people might feel like a sense of exploitation because of that.
I completely understand that. I completely understand that. And there's no real way for me to get around that. Like, I am white, but I'm trying my best. And I feel like you're in South Africa. I mean, like, I'll give you an example of this where you'll never win. Is I did a documentary in Joburg, in Krugersdorp. And it was also like, I was in Joburg, and this was just over one day. I decided to go to this place that I'd heard about quite a lot, called Coronation Park.
Yeah. Is that where the killings or?
No, so it's like it's a caravan park in Krugersdorp, and it was like a group, like a settlement of white homeless people.
Oh yes. I've seen that. I've seen that doc. Yeah.
There was like a few hundred white homeless people living in Coronation Park, and I thought it'd be really interesting to go see that, because you don't often see that kind of stuff in South Africa. So I went to go see it, and they weren't there anymore. They had been moved to a place called Munsieville, which is a township in Krugersdorp, and it's predominantly black township. But there's in the middle of the township, there's a small group of white people living there, right? So we get there, and we did like a short documentary. I wouldn't even call it a documentary. It was kind of, we were just interviewing a few people, talking to a few people. There wasn't anything like crazy in depth. It was just like a 1-day thing. And then I went home and did some research and edited it. And I put that out. And the clips also like went really, really viral. I think that documentary got like 700 and something thousand views on YouTube. And then on social media, it like on Instagram, I think the clip I posted got like 5 million views or something. And every comment was like they were like, why are you documenting the white people? We're in Africa. There's so many black townships. Why aren't you documenting the black townships, right?
Like you can't win.
So it's like, you tell me I'm white and I can't do this, and then I do this, and then you tell me I'm ignoring the rest of the people.
Yeah,
So it's like, it just doesn't, with me, I don't really focus on that anymore, because no matter what you do, you're never going to win. You could post a video of you eating something and people will find a way to turn it into like a hateful video.
Why are you eating that way?
Why are you eating that way?
Yeah.
But I also don't like to get into the cancel culture stuff, because I don't believe it really exists. I think like no matter what you do, everyone gets hate. I mean, you look at like, say like, who's the biggest TikToker or was? Charlie D'Amelio. Look how much hate she gets, dude.
Yeah.
She's like she's 20 years old or however old she is. She's just posting dancing videos on TikTok and people hate her. It's like, it is what it is. The internet's the internet. That's what I've learned. You just got to do your thing. Make sure you're trying your best to do it right. Learn when people criticize you, because I do believe there's a lot to learn. And I'm always like learning from the criticism. I initially go like, fuck this guy. Like, I'm so sick of people criticizing me. You go do it if you can do it better. But then you calm down and you're like, he's kind of got a point.
Yeah.
He's kind of got a point.
And on that, like, social media is one part, but how are you received in these communities? Because obviously they know the type of work you do. They know how you document the Cape Flats. So how is the reception when you step in these communities in real life? Like, how do the people receive you?
It's always amazing. Like, it's always positive interaction. I almost don't think I've ever had a negative interaction.
Someone in person.
And I'm not saying there's people in those areas that don't have a problem with it, because I'm sure there is. And you see it online. Sometimes people, like even just before I got here, there was a video that someone posted saying, come talk to me. I know what I'm talking about. You're interviewing people that are just talking cuck for the cameras.
Yeah.
But most of the time it's really good interactions. And like the one thing that I found amazing was with this documentary, because the first half of it was really like sad. And we were talking to people, like especially this one kid was clearly really in distress, and he obviously had been through a lot. But then the second half of the documentary was positive, right?
Yeah.
And people, and like, I didn't think there was that much, like it was positive, but it was also just like one thing that we did in the video that was positive. And people were like, thank you so much for showing that there's more than just gangsterism in the Cape Flats.
Yeah.
And that really hit me, because I was like, I thought I was going to get a negative reaction to the video. But just showing like 5 minutes of positive things that are happening in those places, people were so happy about that and so thankful for that, that like, it's kind of, I'm going to steer away from the gangster stuff now. Like, I've done it. I think it's important, but at the same time, like, there's so many things that we can look at and criticize about this country. The one thing that we really have going for us is the people here.
Yeah.
Like, and you see it now with all these guys winning, like Drickus winning the UFC, the belt, right? Middleweight champion of the world. You see the Springboks. You see Bafana.
See like, Tyler winning a Grammy.
Tyler winning a Grammy.
Yeah.
Like, despite all the things that people in this country go through, look at us, like we are thriving. Literally, like there's so many of us that are making, and I feel like really this year and the end of last year, it's like people are noticing South Africa.
Yeah.
Wade Van Niekerk, I had him on the podcast the other day.
Yeah, I saw that episode as well. Yeah,
dude, South Africans are so incredible, dude. And I just feel like that's a better thing to focus on.
Definitely.
Right?
You say that you're going to stay away from the gangsterism type of videos. And I feel like some people within the comments, and you mentioned how you saw a comment about someone saying that these people are just putting on a show for a camera.
Yeah.
And I've spoken to a few people as well, and they also might feel that when the camera's off, these gangsters are obviously these hardened people and they've gone through all these struggles. But don't you feel like it's someone's natural reaction to put on a act when they're in front of the camera? Because obviously your recent documentary, the one
course,
clip
yeah.
that went very viral was the guy saying that he will rob all your stuff there and
Yeah.
and smoke it out, essentially. So don't you feel like some of these people do put on a show for the camera because they know people's watching?
Of course, yeah, for sure. They definitely do. And I mean, it's a natural reaction, right? And I think maybe like us, it's a bit different because we're used to it now. We're getting
Yeah.
used to it. But even still, like with me, I do find that there's a camera. You're always aware of the camera,
Yeah.
right? But I think with people that don't go on camera that often, when there's suddenly a camera in front of you, it feels like the world is watching.
This is your moment.
It feels like people are watching, and you finally have a way to share your thoughts and feelings, and especially like in that case, like with those guys, right? They finally like have this moment to share, and it can become like a very emotional thing for them. I'm sure you feel it as well sometimes. Like even now that I'm being interviewed, right? It's more uncomfortable for me. So even moments when I'm speaking about things and you're asking me questions that people don't generally ask, it's like an emotional thing because you're suddenly sitting there and you have to start reflecting on it. Whereas when I'm asking the questions, you don't have to reflect on anything really because you're asking the questions. But yeah, for sure, people do change when the cameras are on. But I think it's almost like being drunk.
Yeah.
You start telling the truth when you're uncomfortable a lot of the time. So even though it is like an over-the-top reaction sometimes you get, a lot of it's coming from truth. So you definitely do change. People do change when the camera's on, but I think at the same time, that doesn't always mean that they're lying. They might be over-exaggerating, but if someone's in pain, they're in pain, right? Like the one kid I interviewed in that documentary, a lot of the stuff he was saying was like, my whole family's been killed. And like, I'm not sure if he was talking about his family or his like gang family.
Yeah.
But if someone says like, oh, he's over-exaggerating or this and that, it's like, the reality is he's a gangster in the Cape Flats and he knows a lot of people that have died at the age of 20 years old, right? So whether they're over-exaggerating or not, you can still see the truth in it. And you can still see... Another thing is, even when people lie on camera, I think it's very telling. Because why are you lying, right? You're obviously lying because you feel like no one is listening. When you tell I'm not talking about like, say, like on like us, right? I'm saying like someone like that kid. He's like... If they're lying, it's like they just, I don't know. There's a reason you're lying. You know what I mean? You're not just lying for the sake of lying. No one lies for the sake of lying.
Yeah.
But I think there's something to be said with when people lie on camera in those kind of situations as well, or over-exaggerate. Maybe they're just trying to over-exaggerate because they're trying to get the message out to way more people so that someone maybe latches onto one thing and, I don't know.
Yeah, obviously, I feel like the more controversial something is, the more people latch onto it.
And
maybe that's their thought process behind it as well, like trying to paint this picture of the encounter within the Cape Flats.
Yeah, because the way that kid made it seem is like the Cape Flats is the Wild West, where people are just running and shooting all the time, which is not the case. But for him, that's the case because he's a gangster. So for him, he's with his friends and... stuff like that's always happening, right? But it's not happening everywhere. But for him, that's his reality. His reality is like, everyone I know is suffering.
And that's what he's trying to bring across, of course.
I can't say what his intentions are.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But I do believe that even if someone's lying, you can still see a lot of truth in what they're saying.
Wow. Definitely, bro. I feel like there's so much going on in the Cape Flats, and it's important that you share these stories. And I'm glad that you also want to steer away from the negatives and try and also show the positives, because at the same time I feel like, especially with the election coming up now, I feel like you're a very important part of that, because these politicians will tell you how much good they've done and how much they've done to help the city, to help the country. And I think like you showing the stories of all the negative still going on and the work they can do is very important.
That's why I think it's important, a big reason, especially coming up to now.
Yeah.
It's like, but the one thing I don't like is people use it to like go after a certain, like I live in Cape Town, right?
Yeah.
And if I make a video on like Cape Town, like something that shines a light on something negative,
Yeah.
like the other political parties will use it against the DA. And if I make a video in Joburg, the DA, I'm not saying they'll do this, or I'm not saying the ANC would, but we know it happens. But
Yeah.
they all use it against each other, right?
Mm-hmm.
As like to paint their own narrative of like, see how bad Cape Town is.
Yeah.
See how bad Joburg is. See how bad Durban is. So I feel like it gets dangerous in those areas. But I do think it's important because like I was speaking to someone the other day and they said, you shouldn't show all this negative stuff, right? Like you should focus on the positive. But at the same time, if you just post all positive stuff, people are going to go, South Africa is amazing.
Yeah.
South Africa is amazing.
And also
you know what I mean? Where it's not amazing. It's an amazing place, but there's so many things that need to change. And if you're only posting positive stuff, that stuff will never change because they'll be like, see, no one cares.
No one cares because they just fed this happy place. And there's no pressure for them to change.
Yeah, it's like, look at these people living in the township. Look how happy they are.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like,
What do
they're happy. They're trying their hardest in a really bad situation. That says more about the South Africans
Then the South African government.
than the government. Yes. Like, even though everyone is struggling so much, we're still extremely happy people. We hard workers. We're, breaking into the mainstream, like we were saying just now.
Yeah.
With all the athletes and musical artists and people like you, you know.
Yeah. You as well, bro. You as well. You as well.
Yeah, it says a lot about South Africans that even though we live in in a place that is so plagued with so many hardships, we're still thriving. I just can't imagine what South Africa would be like if we didn't have these problems.
Yeah.
Imagine how incredible it would be if we didn't have all these problems. I was interviewing the mayor the other day and I said to him, do you think South Africa there'll ever be a time where no one is living in a shack?
Yeah.
So maybe a silly question because all around the world there's people living in poverty. And he said no, right? He said no, there'll never be a time, which is a realistic answer. But a lot of people use that against him as well. But yeah, there's a lot of challenges in South Africa, but South Africans are amazing people.
On the topic of politics, please tell people why it's important to vote, because I feel like that's something that we need to drill within everyone's head, especially in this time.
You know what's so funny?
Yeah.
I saw a comment the other day and on my podcast, and they said this is a DA-run podcast.
Yeah.
Because I was interviewing the mayor.
mayor.
And I replied to that comment. I just said, this is the most ridiculous comment I've ever seen.
I got the same thing when I had the mayor on my podcast. Everyone is saying like, "Yo, EB, be careful. They're trying to use you for the DA."
No, I've had
that, and it's actually interesting that they said, because the minute the mayor, me and the mayor had a conversation about the podcast happening, I was quick to tell him like, I'm cool with this podcast happening as long as there's no DA propaganda.
Yeah.
Because I still want to allow my people to make their own choice, not to be influenced by something that I'm pushing towards them. Do you know what I mean?
Of course, yeah.
Like the reason why we have these podcasts with the mayor and these people is to address things for you guys and to allow you guys to have insight within the political field that we might not have. And you know what I mean? And to understand what's happening behind the scenes. And I feel like there's no better way to do that than by having these people do your thing, bro. And by having these people come on here and share.
I'm short, so I need to keep my legs up.
Yeah, I get you. And share their story and share how things are happening behind the scenes, so you can have a better idea on who you want to vote for.
Yeah. But dude, it's, what can you say? It's so like important. And I honestly feel like this is such a crucial time in South Africa. And I don't know like almost anything about politics. Like I've just started learning since I started the podcast, because I've had politicians on. I've had Gate McKenzie, I've had John Steenhuisen, I've had Musi Mayamani, and I've tried to get like Julius. I haven't really tried to get Cyril. I will try and get Cyril. But they're a lot, for some reason, they're just a lot harder to get, right? People like Gaten McKenzie, people like Musi Mayamani, people like John Steenhuisen and Jordan Hill Lewis, they were open to coming on the show.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure you saw, right? But it's like, if things don't change, dude, I think we're going down a rabbit hole that's just like this. It's not going to lead to anywhere good. I mean, I don't want to tell people who to vote for because I don't know who to vote for, to be honest. You have to kind of take it on your own judgment, right? Look at what's been happening over the past 20, 30 years, right? Has South Africa got better or worse? It's got worse, right?
Yeah.
Are people living in a better state than they were 10 years ago? No, they're not. Are there more homeless people in South Africa? Yes, they are, right? Are people, are their wages increasing? No, they're not, right? Most people anyway.
And that's actually interesting that you say, like, has the world improved, has stuff improved? And I was reading these stats yesterday that were sharing over social media. I don't know how true it is, because obviously people can easily manipulate fake news to make the ANC look worse than what it is. But they were just showing how the crime rates went from 59 people getting killed every day to 75 people getting killed every day. The inflation became a lot higher. Petrol prices a lot higher over the last 5 years in itself. And it just seems like things are going down a path where the people are just taking.
Yeah.
And not
that's all they're doing. They're just taking everything.
They're just taking. It's sort of like if you ran your podcast and you just get benefit and you never pay the people that were actually on the podcast.
Well, it's like saying you have a whole crew of people working for you, right? Like the country's working for the country.
Yeah.
So I have a whole crew of people working for me and none of them are getting paid. So I'm sitting here making, in an imaginary world, because we know we don't make that much money, making millions, and everyone that's doing all the work behind the scenes is making nothing.
Yeah.
Right? It's crazy. And the sad thing is I don't know who to vote for. I don't know if another political party got in, if they would be able to keep their promises. I don't know.
It's difficult. It leads you to a space on who do you trust, bro?
But the one thing I know is that the ANC are in power and things are getting worse. So what is the harm in trying something else?
They always say the devil you know is better than the devil you don't know. So I think people are afraid to vote someone new in because they feel like if they vote someone new in and it's worse than what it is.
Yeah.
And I feel like some South Africans also feel a lot about the past, for instance, and voting a certain power in, they feel like things might go back to how they were.
Well, that's one of the things I asked Jordan L. Lewis. I said to him, why have the ANC been in power for so long? And he said, because it's one of the most famous political parties in the world.
Yeah.
Which it is. It is. I mean, everyone knows the ANC.
Internationally.
Nelson Mandela, dude. One of the most famous people in human history. You know what I mean? Who was the president of the ANC. So it's one of the most famous political parties in the whole world, right? Everyone knows not everyone, a lot of people know the ANC because of leaders like Mandela, right? And because it was the Liberation Party during apartheid. But, I mean, I don't know, dude. I mean, the other thing is, obviously, because of apartheid, people have a connection, right? Because it was the Liberation Party. But at this point, I just feel like you have to try something different.
Yeah.
There's just no other way. There's just no other way. And I don't know if it will be better, if it will be worse. I just know whatever's happening right now has to change.
Yeah, something has to give. Something has to give. Now, moving away from that, I want to talk about...
Otherwise, we'll start a rebellion.
Moving away from politics, I want to talk about some of your most interesting guests.
Yeah.
Separate away from gangsters and politicians. You done an America tour and you interviewed a lot of interesting people there, like this real life Joker that you interviewed.
Yeah.
So how was the whole experience on the America tour for you?
So I wanted to try because, like we said, in South Africa, you make so little on ad revenue from YouTube that I thought, let me go and try somewhere else. And I originally thought the UK, and then that plan changed, and I decided to go to America. And my brother's sister lives there, so I stayed with her at the beginning, and I rented a car, and like I was trying to get a hold of so many guests before I left because I didn't want to just get there and like have no plan.
Yeah.
But no one was responding to me, like literally not one single person. And so I was just like, I've booked the tickets, I have to go.
Yeah.
So I just went, and then when I got there, I got an American SIM card, and I just started calling people. Like just started trying to find their numbers, trying to like DM them on Instagram, everything I could think of. And the first guest I got was David Pakkies. Do you know who David Pakkies?
No.
Dude, that episode got like 20,000 views. It didn't do well at all. But did you ever see the movie War Dogs? It was the two young guys that were gun runners. They had like a massive deal with the Pentagon where they like were supplying like $300 million of ammunition and weapons. It was, the main actor was Jonah Hill, who played a guy called Ephraim Devroli.
Yes, I think it's painting the picture in my
And the
head
other
now.
guy was, what's his name? The guy from Top Gun, the young one. Miles Teller. He was the guy that I interviewed. So I didn't interview Miles Teller. I interviewed the guy
who
Miles
was
Teller
playing-
played in the
yeah.
movie called David Pakkies. And like, I was walking around America, like I was in Boca Raton, and I had to drive to Miami for this podcast. It was in his flat. And I drove down through to Miami, which is like an hour and a half drive from where I was, or an hour's drive. And I'm carrying like all of my equipment, like a full studio, 2 or 3 cameras, 3 tripods, 2 lights, big lights, 2 light stands, 3 microphones, like mic stands, memory cards, hard drives,
Just everything.
camera bags. Dude, I was walking around with like 100 kilos of equipment.
Yeah.
And then I get to the location and I have to set it up every single time. So like a full studio every single time. And like every location's different. So there's an echo in some rooms. There's no echo in other rooms. There's like, the lighting's really bad. So it was like a big task. And then we sit down, I interview this guy for like 3 hours. Really interesting interview. The lighting was all over the place.
Yeah.
But so that was the first guy I interviewed, David Pakkies, dude. Like it was a pretty crazy story. You should watch the movie. It's interesting. War Dogs.
Yeah.
Another guy I interviewed was called the Real Life Joker.
The guy's face is painted just like
Crazy, yeah.
The
so
Joker.
he's just like a normal guy that, well, he's not normal. He's like just the guy who tattooed his whole face like the Joker, right?
wow. That's
And
interesting. My mother would tell me that's witchcraft, but yeah.
he got famous
Yeah.
because he got arrested and his mugshot was of him in like an orange jumpsuit with his face like the Joker.
And that goes viral.
So that went viral everywhere. So you know the whole Florida man meme. Like so many crazy things happens in Florida.
oh, yes. yes,
So it's like there's a meme, it's like Florida man. And he was like one of the most famous Florida men, right? So I went to him and I get to his house. I had to drive like 5 hours or something to get to him. And I stayed overnight where not at his house, but down the road. And it was like this middle of America town, very small. Like everyone kind of looked like they were living in a trailer.
Yeah,
Kind of,
yeah.
that kind of vibe, right? So I get into his house and like it's just him living there by himself, from what I could tell. He does have a kid and a girlfriend, but they weren't there. The house was trashed. There was like guns everywhere. He had, well, not everywhere. He had a few guns in the house, but like proper AKs and like heavy.
Bro, oh, you're not afraid, dog.
You just have to, like I said, you just have to trust and hope hope for the best. But I've seen him. He's been online quite a few times.
Yeah.
So this is what he does. He does social media stuff, but he's like a felon. Like he's been arrested. I don't know how he's allowed to have guns.
Yeah.
He does. And that was really interesting. Dude, I interviewed so many, like not so many. I interviewed like 8 or 9 or 10 different people. I interviewed a lady that ran an escort agency, which that episode actually never went out.
Why?
Just wasn't that good. Just wasn't that good. I wasn't that happy with it. But
I think just the concept of it.
it was very interesting, but it just wasn't a great execution. I almost quit on that episode halfway because, not halfway, before I even started, because the setup was so hectic. It was in a law firm. She's like a lawyer now, so it was just the setup was horrible. But I also interviewed Mike Dowd, who was like the most corrupt cop in New York City history. I interviewed, they say he is, he probably isn't, but they say he is. And there's a whole documentary about him. I interviewed hitman Larry Muzzer, who worked on the movie The Irishman.
Yeah.
He was like a full-on hitman for a notorious crime family in New York. there was a bunch of people. Yeah.
Yeah, you've done quite a few interesting ones in America. You also interviewed Toki. You interviewed him. He's obviously the Antwoord's child.
Yeah.
And in that episode, we learned so much about these people and like what they do behind the scenes, and like how has that interview of Toki changed your perspective on all these superstars. And
Well, I think the Antwoord's like an interesting case because they are way more out there than a lot of celebrities, right? Like, I feel like a lot of celebrities do weird things behind the scenes. They do it like for everyone to see because it's part of their personality, a part of their persona. The interview with Toki was interesting. I was still very much at the beginning phases. Like, I also still feel right now I'm at the beginning phase of this whole thing.
Yeah.
So I don't think I conducted the interview the best way I could have. Like, I was very much like, I wasn't biased at all. I was very much on his side because I'd heard all the things that he had been through. And I think a lot of them were real. He was also very young, so you're not sure. The end of the day, whatever happened, happened. I don't know exactly what happened. I've got his side of the story. I've always said if Ninja and Dianfoot if Ninja and Yolandi want to come on the podcast and share their side, I'd love that. But I only know Toki's side of the story. It's a tricky one. It's a tricky one. But whatever happened, I don't know exactly what happened. He was in a bad circumstance. They definitely, he was not in a place where a kid should be in. Shouldn't be at crazy house parties and like staying at home with nannies for 3 weeks by themselves and drugs around them. And I know that they also, they did some stuff with gangsters for a music video, and he was with them, and for a movie he was also with them. He was exposed to things no kid should be exposed to. But I wonder what the real story is. I know that they're releasing a documentary soon, which would be interesting to see.
Yeah, I'd like to see their perspective. Another guest that you also had was Mr. Beast's girlfriend. Mr. Beast's girlfriend.
Oh yeah, Thea.
Yeah, how did that come about, bro?
Dude, I don't know. I saw that Mr. Beast was in South Africa, and then like a few weeks later or a few months later, I don't know how I saw that he was dating a South African girl, because I think they were keeping it quite hush-hush.
Yeah.
Until recently, even for ages they were keeping it quite quiet, because he's got such a big fan base, and for her to just break out and suddenly be exposed to hundreds of millions of people, it's a scary thing,
Transition, yeah.
So they had to transition it slowly, but I don't know how I found out she was in Cape Town. I think I just saw something online, and I just reached out to her. At the time, she had like a few thousand followers on Instagram. She was still living in Cape Town. I messaged her. She said she was keen to come on the podcast, and we did it, and we went all out for that episode. It was the most ridiculous episode I've ever done.
Why?
Dude, I hired so many props and stuff for it. Like, we got this massive spinning wheel with all these weird challenges on it. Like, the one was like the anaconda, or like the snake challenge, which was like not actually a challenge. It was basically just like if it landed on that, the guy walks in with a massive python, which happened. Like, so we landed on that, and then I had a guy waiting outside with like a 3-4 meter long python.
I needed that, bro. I was trying to scare my girlfriend. I brought a small snake.
No, you can. I know the guy. He's a great guy.
How big? How big is it?
Massive. I mean, it's like
longer than this couch.
Yeah, for sure. And it's like this thick. But that was the small one. He had a bigger one as well. But he said it's hard to use that, and also you don't want to put the animal in too much distress.
Yeah.
So because a lot of people do that, they use like animals in videos, and the animal's always in distress. But this guy is like a trained professional, and it was under very like calm environment. It was in the podcast studio, and he just walked in, taught us a bit about it, and then put the snake on her and let her touch it and stuff. And then we like another one was like we did a quiz where every question she got right, I had to shave part of my hair off. Like I went full Mr. Beast on that one.
It was trying to obviously. That's actually smart though.
And I mean, some of the clips did really well. I mean, dude, I saw people posting clips of that podcast even still today. Like yesterday, I saw clips of it being posted. I mean, it's got 10 times more views on other people's platforms than my platform.
Yours, yeah.
I mean, I saw videos that people posted with like 20 million views.
It goes like that though. It goes like that with podcasts.
I don't mind it.
And I also heard Aiden Ross said like someone's virality and someone's relevance is not based on how much your YouTube video get anymore. It's based on all the clips, bro. Because your clips getting posted in so many different places is what's going to keep you relevant, is what's going to make you go viral every single time. a few more questions before we go. Ellen Pakkies, bro.
Yeah.
A very, very groundbreaking episode. And also the fact that the way you went to go find her. You obviously told me the story. I don't know if you shared the story on the podcast thus far, but
I don't know if I have. I think I might have.
how did you discover Ellen Pakkies and ask her to come on your podcast?
Oh, that was like the Turner one. Also, it was very difficult. So I had no idea where she was or what she was doing. And I also spent like a month trying to find her, just trying to contact so many different people, looking up like Pakkies on Facebook to see if I could find relatives and stuff. And I found like a guy that had the same name as her and they were friends on Facebook. And I called him. I got his number. He gave it to me and I called him and I was like, are you family with Ellen Pakkies? And he was like, no, but I know her. And I was like, it was a weird thing.
Yeah.
It was weird. And I just kept calling people, couldn't find her. So after like 3 weeks or a month or whatever it was, I just decided I'm going to just go to the area where I think she lives.
Yeah.
Which I think, I'm not sure which area. I think I went to Athlone because I saw something online that said she was part of a church in Athlone.
Yeah.
But I think it was literally, she'd just done one thing with them. So I went to Athlone and she didn't live there. I was talking to a priest at one of the churches. He said she was here once, but she's never been back. So I went home and I was like, okay, now I really don't know what to do. And then I decided to, like, if you guys don't know who Ellen Pakkies is, she lives in Lavender Hills and her whole life she was abused. She had been brought up in terrible circumstances. She was abused by her family friends. She was sexually assaulted on a number of occasions, and she just had a really hard upbringing.
Yeah.
And her partners had all been abusive as well, and she ended up killing her son because he was also extremely abusive. And I think she just had a moment where she just couldn't take it anymore, to be honest. And she ended up murdering him, and she didn't do any prison time because they basically came to the conclusion that she just wasn't in control. She just, after all of the years of abuse, she just wasn't in control anymore. But, or something like that. Anyway, so I got home after trying to look for her for ages. And then I just thought to myself, let me look online for where the incident happened, where she murdered her son.
Yeah.
And it told me, it told me the exact block.
Yeah.
I forgot the name of it, but it told me the name of the block and I looked it up. I found it on Google and it was in Lavender Hills and I just drove there. And I had only been into Lavender Hills once or twice before then. So I stopped by a community center to ask people if they knew where Ellen Pakkies lived. And this one young kid called Dre said, yeah, I know exactly where she lives. And he took me to that exact block. And we just walked straight into her house, basically.
I knocked on the door.
I knocked on the door and she was there.
And then what did you tell her? Like,
I said to her, I'm a podcast host. And she's like, what's a podcast?
yeah.
So I explained it to her and I explained what I do and I showed her some of my stuff. And she said she'll think about it.
Yeah.
She was a bit hesitant, which is understandable. She's never done anything like this. She's done documentaries and stuff, but she's never done anything like this. So I gave her my number. She gave me her number. And then she said she'll let me know. And she didn't let me know for ages. Well, not ages, but also like another 3 weeks or so. Or 2 or 3 or 4 weeks. And eventually I got a call. She said, let's do it.
And you were probably excited for that one, huh?
I was excited, yeah, for sure, because it's such a... The thing is, it's a unique story, but it's not unique because I think to us it's unique.
I think it's the most popular of these unique stories.
Yes, but stuff like that happens so often in variations, not exact same circumstances, but in places like where she lives, it happens quite. People go through so much.
Yeah.
So I just thought this is such an interesting story, and I'd never seen her on any other platform except for like a scripted series, or I think she'd been in a documentary and there was a movie made about her. So I just thought it'd be really interesting to hear from her. That's the whole thing of my podcast. It's like, I want to interview the person that the movie's about.
Yeah.
I don't want to interview the actor.
Yeah.
I'm not interested necessarily in celebrities. Like some of them have really interesting stories, like people like Sia Khaleesi, right? Wade Van Niekerk, Cheslin, like these guys have interesting stories. And I just thought, I really want to bring her on to share her story. And she came on, and dude, I was so emotional during that episode as well. I didn't think I was going to be, because I've done so much of this kind of stuff, but it just hit me, dude. When you see someone in front of you and you see them how they are now, but like after hearing all the things she's been through, I'm just like, wow, dude.
You're strong.
So strong, dude. To be able to go through all those things and just come out the other side and just carry on, like,
that's
a lot of people couldn't do that.
A lot of people would have done a lot of stuff to help harm themselves, or not even be able to like resist the situation and overcome it. And our Ellen Pakkies is a very, very strong woman.
Very, dude.
I would love to say that. But bro, out of all the work you do, bro, what do you want to achieve from everything that you've done and everything that you're going to do?
See, this is the thing I don't know. I don't really know, because there's no real final destination with this kind of stuff. Right? If you're like in South Africa, if I'm doing stuff that's like creating some sort of awareness or trying to create some sort of change, like the problem will never be fixed, or it might one day, but it's so far in the future. Right? So it's like you can shine light on something, but often it doesn't change. In South Africa, especially, like I've mentioned, like during the podcast with John Steenhuisen, I mentioned to him, I said, there's this dam in Dunoon, in the township Dunoon, where it's like, it's a quarry or a reservoir or something that's just filled up with trash. But like, I don't know if you've seen the video. It's insane.
Like crazy trash.
Insane. Dude, it's like this massive, like it's a big space with just water, sludge, and trash. And I've even heard there's like dead bodies in there, because like if there's township justice, like someone commits a crime and the police don't come and arrest the person, sometimes the community takes it into their own hands. They'll like get rid of the bodies there, or if there's like fighting between people and they're trying to get rid of a body. I also heard for abortions, like, you know, they do abortions in the township sometimes. They'll get rid of the bodies there. Like, it's like seriously toxic water. Like they put all the sewage there, all the trash there. It's like hectic, dude. Like I've seen dead dogs lying around there. And I actually went in there with a canoe to get footage of it from like inside, basically. And I said to John Steenhuisen, like, can we fix this? He said, we don't know. First was he doesn't know if it's land that the DA has control over, or if it's like national. I don't know exactly what he said, but he said the DA might actually not be able to do anything. I think they can. I don't know what the logistics are. I feel like it's just go fucking clean it up.
Go clean it.
You clean it up. You don't need to own the land to clean it up. But that's never changed. That's still there. It's still the same. I mean, so many of the things I've covered over the years, nothing's changed. So it's like, what is the final destination? I don't know. Because like, I feel like the final destination would be change, right?
Definitely.
And nothing's changed.
And obviously, all this awareness that you're bringing to it is so that we can have change and to put pressure on the right people to allow this change to take place.
I also don't want to put too much importance on what I'm doing. Right? Because a lot of people think like, as like podcasters or like as videographers, we're going to change the world. It's like, know your place. You're a podcaster, you're making videos. There's people that are actually like on the ground, like doctors, right? In places like the ones I go visit, who are there to deal with like the real issues and the real things happening, right? I know that obviously I have a platform and I can amplify things that are happening, but at the end of the day, I'm a podcaster, I'm a content creator. There's people doing amazing work. And hopefully I can just shine light on what they're doing. But if I have the opportunity to call some politicians out, I'm going to do it, you know? And try and get them to change something.
Definitely, bro. The work you've done is immense. I feel like it'll always be looked at ambiguously. Some people might look at it in a positive way, others in a negative way. But please continue to do the work you do. And
thank you.
Thank you for being on the podcast, man. Thank you so much for coming and spending your time. This is probably the longest episode we've had. But guys, this has been Josh Wide Awake. Go watch his podcast and support what he's doing. Love.
Thanks, bro. Thank you.
That's it. Yo, that was long. How long is that, Louis?